Hello again, fellow travelers. Eon here, with another story to share with you all. Today's story comes from ancient Greece. Instead of one of the more primordial tales, where the gods alone ruled the earth, this takes place in a time where humans were very much abundant in the world. This era saw civilizations whose cultures developed elements still recognizable today. The ancient Greeks were familiar with politics, philosophy, art, sciences, and many other aspects that we still see in our everyday lives. Life in the ancient era came with a very different set of worries and fears. In those days, daily life came at a greater cost than those living well in our current time. As time went on, we have eliminated several of these problems, yet even with development ridding us of a plethora of our problems, there are many that have remained through evolution. Though most of us don't have to worry about a bear or lion tearing us away from life, there's something else that can: spiders. The absolute bane of some people's existence. These eight-legged creatures exist across the globe, and have done so for millennia. It's interesting how such a small creature can strike such fear into us. According to this story, this wasn't a fear for the people of ancient Greece. According to them, this creature was brought into the world by the arrogant acts of one individual. This is a story of Arachne the Weaver. Hundreds of years ago, the city of Athens stood as a notable spot in Greece, known for their pursuits of the arts. Many of the people who lived in Athens dedicated their lives to the muses. They manifested their inspiration into a multitude of artistic practices, including theater, painting, poetry, weaving, among many others. Every once in a while, a master would arise, someone who it seemed was better than everyone else at their craft. These masters often received widespread recognition, and in some cases, their legacy stood the test of time. Today we can find some of their works held in museums for all to adore. One of these recognized masters was Arachne, a woman with pale skin and frail limbs who spent days and nights held up in her home, weaving together fabrics to create gorgeous pieces of clothing and tapestries. Without relying on her natural looks, Arachne can turn the heads of even the most modest men with their clothing. People from all parts of life used to buy from her. As her reputation grew, however, she demanded on using finer ingredients. Her prices rose, and her clients diminished only the wealthiest individuals. Arachne amassed a considerable amount of wealth through her trade. But it might as well have been trash. Her only interest was weaving, and she had no interest in spending her money on anything that wouldn't help her further her art. She took pride in her work, and boasted to each client she had that they would be receiving a product that would make the gods themselves jealous. Her boast spread throughout Athens, getting bloated as gossip does, transforming Arachne into a local hero. Some even started to wonder if she was a demigod herself. On one summer day, a scraggly old woman hobbled into Arachne's shop. Her face was sun-beaten, and her skin hung off her crooked frame like an overcooked marshmallow. She was dressed in a set of robes that were full of holes, with patches of dust painted on by the wind. The old woman called out to Arachne, who was busy working on her loom. Her eyes were laser-focused, darting side to side as she laid piece after piece of fine cloth. She called out to her several more times before getting an answer. The shrill old voice of the woman sung through, and Arachne turned around to face her. But instead of getting up to greet her, she waved the old lady over, asking what she needed. The lady told her story to Arachne, saying that she was on a pilgrimage, and had come to Athens to visit the shrine of the glorious Athena. She wished for Arachne to make her a beautiful dress, so that when she worships the goddess, she could do so with the utmost respect. Arachne was hesitant, and decided to ask the woman how she was going to pay for the dress. The old woman responded by saying that she couldn't afford the full price, but that she would give what she could, and promised that when she got to the shrine, she would pray for Arachne, and ask the goddess to further bless her abilities. Arachne rolled her eyes as the woman rambled on. She claimed that she did not need any of her meaningless prayers, and demanded that the woman find a way to pay her, or else leave. The old woman tried again, pleading to Arachne with tears in her eyes that this would be the greatest gift she could offer the goddess, and if she wouldn't find it in her heart to do it for her, then to do it for Athena. Arachne refused again. She gripped the edge of her loom and glared at the old woman. She told the woman that her work was worth more than just to please a silly goddess. Arachne was then met with the confused hazel eyes. But was it not the gods who gave you your gift in the first place? How could you not want to give thanks to them? said the old woman. Arachne scoffed, and told her that her ability was the work of her and her alone, and that the gods wouldn't bother helping her one bit. She then went on to claim that she was the greatest seamstress to ever exist, and that the reasons the gods never taught her is that they were afraid they would realize how feeble they were before the mortals. The woman shook her head. She stood upright, and her body transformed. Her saggy skin sunk back into her body, creating tight pale skin without a single blemish. Her white hair fell to the ground, with new golden-brown locks sprouting up to replace them. Her entire being shed away, to reveal the glorious goddess Athena underneath. Her radiance brightened Arachne's dark workshop, shoving light into every corner of the room, even managing to scare away a couple of rats that had become comfortable in the stillness. Arachne stood rigid with a lump in her throat. Deep inside, she wished she hadn't said what she did. Her ego started to flood her mind again, and she shifted herself so she could stand with her hands on her hips, smirking at the revealed goddess. Athena walked towards Arachne, eyeing her down before shifting her gaze towards her loom. Without looking towards her, Athena spoke, and proclaimed that tomorrow at sunrise they would have a competition to see who was truly the greatest seamstress. Arachne accepted, intending to hold up to her own words. At the first sign of dawn, Arachne awoke to the sound of a crowd who had gathered in wait for the competition. She went outside and found one loom set up, obviously meant to be Athena's. She spent the morning preparing for the competition, while fighting off the doubtful thoughts that tried to crawl into her mind. The crowd were gossiping amongst themselves, debating who would win. Devout followers of Athena had no question that she would succeed, as no one is greater than the gods. But others argued that Arachne had a chance, as clearly there was no one better on Earth. Some even added that humans had accomplished some magnificent feats, even greater than those in the tales of the gods. At the strike of noon, the two began. The onlookers stared at awe as the both of them darted their fingers along the loom with inhuman precision and grace. The two made it seem trivial, like they were doing something as simple as walking. Minutes had passed, and the crowd had not made a peep. Arachne was weaving as fast as she could, and even when her fingers started to ache, she continued. She became curious about halfway through, as the thoughts of doubt started to crawl into her head again. She had been so focused on her work she had forgotten she was even in a competition, and had not even so much as looked to see how Athena was doing. She tried to keep focus, but the unknown burned away at her. For all she knew, Athena was already done, and standing behind her, mocking her. She took a quick glance behind her to check on Athena. She found her busy at work, weaving together a beautiful golden tapestry displaying her story as a goddess. It proudly displayed her greatest feat, her gift of the olive to the people of Earth. Arachne huffed, and returned to her work. She found it distasteful that the goddess would choose this as an opportunity to show off. She cooked up a wicked plan to humiliate her. She changed her pattern. Using what she had already established as the edge of the tapestry, she went on to weave depictions of the gods performing evil, treacherous acts upon the mortals. The crowd soon became aware of Arachne's plot. They murmured amongst themselves, shocked and curious to see what would happen next. With tears in her eyes, one of Athena's followers pointed at Arachne. "Look! Look! The little witch disgraces our patron goddess!" Athena, unable to focus, looked over at Arachne. She stared in disbelief at what she was doing. She got up from her spot and stormed over to Arachne. She summoned her staff and struck at her loom, smashing it into pieces. Arachne tried to run, but as she did so her legs gave out. All four of her limbs shriveled into her body until she was left a writhing torso. 8 slender, hairy legs burst from her back, clawing at the ground trying to find stability. Her body bloated into 2 distinct sections, and her eyes split into 8. The hubris that Arachne was so full of turned to poison inside of her, and dripped from her new, sharp fangs. Athena stood over the disfigured creature, with a look of disgust, not for the monster she had made, but for what it represented. She then spoke to Arachne, loud enough so each syllable reached the ears of the masses, serving as an example. "For your arrogance, I have cursed you to live out the rest of your days as a monster. You are now on the outside exactly what you are on the inside. But, for your devotion to my gift, I will still allow you to weave." Athena departed, and Arachne was unable to stand her current form. She retreated into the woods. Generations onward, and the world is now full of Arachne's descendants. her God-given skill has been passed down to most, and yet something else has also stayed the test of time. Arachne's hubris. The poison that was her undoing has remained within some spiders, a hubris so great it can cause physical harm to those injected by it. Spiders can be terrifying to some, and for good reason. But for every venomous spider that could kill you with a single bite, there are many more that simply want to live on, creating beautiful pieces of art, expressing the gift of the ancestor. We have to remember that many of the things we do now will be passed on to the next generation. It doesn't mean that bad gifts must always stay bad. Spiders very rarely use their poison to harm people. Most of it is spent on their food, where they serve a very important part of the food chain, eating insects that would otherwise go uncontrolled. We can follow the example of the spider, and we too could turn our burdens into gifts that help make the world a better place. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story and wish to hear more, please subscribe and ring the bell to receive notifications, and have a wonderful day.